The abandoned twins. The night was cold and silent. The stars above the alien world looked dim and lifeless. Deep inside a broken cave, two tiny alien twin sisters sat close together. Their thin arms wrapped around each other, their big glowing eyes filled with fear. They were small, fragile, and weak, their skin pale from hunger. Their clothes nothing more than torn rags. The cave was dark. The wind outside howled like a beast, and every sound made them tremble. They had been left here, abandoned by their own people. The twins whispered in their strange tongue, their voices shaking. They spoke of hunger, of thirst, of the cruel words their people had said before leaving them behind, too weak to survive. They had been told, better left in the dark. The words still echoed in their minds. They tried to sleep, but the ground was too cold. Their little bodies shook. One sister coughed while the other tried to cover her with her own arms. Tears rolled down their cheeks. They were sure they would not see the next sunrise. But then, in the deep silence, there came a sound, footsteps, slow but steady, echoing in the cave. The twins froze, holding their breath. Their hearts raced. Was it a beast? Was it an enemy? Or was it the end? A dim light appeared at the cave's mouth, flickering and growing brighter. The twins' glowing eyes widened, and in fear they pressed closer to each other. The light came from a small lantern held by a human man. Behind him padded a loyal dog with bright eyes and a wagging tail. The human's shadow stretched across the rocks, tall and strange. The twins had heard stories of humans, stories of danger, of cruelty. Their people had told them humans could not be trusted. The little sisters whispered in fear, "He will hurt us." The man stopped when he saw them. His eyes softened, and he lowered the lantern. He saw two tiny alien girls, thin as sticks, shivering, their faces wet with tears. They looked more like frightened children than anything else. His heart ached. The dog, a strong brown creature named Max, tilted his head, then slowly walked toward the twins. His tail wagged. The girls pressed against the rock wall, too afraid to move. Max sniffed their hands, then licked their small fingers. The twins gasped, their fear wavered, warmth spread through their hearts at the simple touch. No beast, no enemy, only kindness. One of them let out a weak laugh, the first sound of joy in days. The other smiled faintly, their first smile since they had been abandoned. The man knelt down, keeping his voice soft. "It's all right," he said. Though they did not understand his words, his tone was gentle, and his eyes were full of care. He opened his pack and took out a piece of bread, slowly breaking it into small pieces. He placed the food in front of them, then sat back, showing he meant no harm. Hunger was stronger than fear. The twins looked at each other, then slowly reached for the bread. They ate quickly, their eyes filling with tears of relief. The man pulled off his heavy jacket and carefully wrapped it around the shivering girls. They stared at him with wide eyes, not knowing why a stranger would help them, not knowing why a human would show mercy. The cave was silent again, except for the crackle of the lantern and the sound of Max breathing softly. The twins huddled in the warmth of the jacket, their little bodies finally beginning to relax. But fear still lingered. Outside the cave, far away, voices echoed in the night. Alien patrols searching the wastelands. They were looking for the abandoned ones. If they found the twins alive, they would not let them live another day. The man listened, his jaw tightened. He knew danger was near, yet he did not move away. He looked at the twins and made a choice in his heart. He could not leave them, not here, not in this dark place. The twins felt it too, even without words. They felt his presence, the warmth of his dog, the safety of his jacket. And for the first time since they had been left in the cold, they dared to hope. One twin whispered to the other, her voice barely a breath. "Maybe he is not like the others." Her sister nodded, clutching the jacket tightly, and together they closed their eyes, not in fear, but in a fragile, uncertain comfort. The human sat beside them, keeping the lantern burning. Max curled against the twins as if they were his own. The cave that had been filled with despair now carried a small flame of life. The night outside was still dangerous, the patrol still searched, but inside the cave something new had begun. A bond that neither the human nor the twins yet understood. A bond that could change everything. And so, in that cold and forgotten cave, two abandoned alien sisters found a strange kind of family, in a human they feared, in a dog they trusted, and in a kindness they never believed could exist. Fear and shelter. The night stretched long and heavy. The cave no longer felt like a prison, but the twins could not shake the fear in their hearts. They sat wrapped in the human's jacket, warm for the first time in days, yet every sound outside made them shiver. Jack, the human, sat near the cave entrance with his lantern dimmed, his eyes never leaving the darkness beyond. Max, his loyal dog, rested at his side, ears twitching at every distant echo. Jack was calm but alert. He knew the land was not safe. The twins watched him quietly, whispering in their alien tongue. They were confused. Their people had told them humans were dangerous, cruel, and selfish. But this one had given them food, warmth, and protection. Their small hands clutched the jacket tightly as if it were a treasure. When Jack stood, the girls gasped in fear, but he only reached for a water flask, kneeling again and offering it to them. His smile was gentle, his voice soft. Though they could not understand his words, they felt his kindness. Still, their fear made them hesitate. One twin touched the flask but pulled back. The other whispered something in her language. Hunger and thirst finally broke their fear. Together they drank the cool water. Their eyes filled with tears. It was the sweetest thing they had tasted in their short lives. Jack watched them drink, his heart heavy with sorrow. No child should ever look this desperate. He looked at Max and whispered, "We can't leave them here, old boy." Max wagged his tail as if he already knew. But Jack also knew the risk. The patrols of aliens had been thick in this part of the forest. He had heard the stories of what they did to the abandoned. They called it mercy. But Jack knew it was nothing less than cruelty. He would not let it happen again, not to these little ones. He stood and motioned for them to come, pointing toward the cave mouth. The twins panicked, clutching each other. Their whispers turned fearful again. They thought he was taking them to hand them over. Their hearts raced. Max walked forward and barked once, wagging his tail, then trotted after Jack. The twins looked at the dog, confused but comforted. If the dog trusted the human, maybe they could too. Slowly, they followed, their small feet stumbling on the rocks. The night air outside bit at their skin, but Jack moved quickly, carrying the lantern low. Max trotted ahead, checking the path. The twins stumbled, too weak to walk far. Jack stopped and without a word bent down, lifting both of them into his strong arms. They froze in shock, expecting pain, but instead felt steady warmth. His jacket wrapped around them tighter, his chest rising and falling with every breath. He carried them as though they weighed nothing. Their eyes widened. Their fear began to melt into wonder. Through the forest they traveled, the trees tall and whispering with the wind. In the distance strange lights flickered, alien patrol ships scanning the land. Jack crouched low, moving carefully, his dog silent as a shadow. The twins buried their faces against him, afraid of the lights, but Jack whispered softly, "It's all right, I've got you." They did not understand the words, but the tone soothed them. For the first time they began to believe he might be more than just a stranger. After what felt like hours, they reached a small cabin hidden deep among the trees. Smoke curled faintly from the chimney. The place smelled of wood and earth. Max barked happily and ran to the door, waiting for Jack. Inside the cabin was warm. A small fire burned in the hearth. Shelves lined the walls, and a simple bed sat in the corner. The twins' eyes widened. They had never seen a place like this. It was not grand, but it was safe. It felt alive. Jack set them gently on the bed. Max hopped up beside them, curling close as if guarding them. The twins sat stiff at first, their eyes darting around, fear still clinging to them. But the fire's warmth began to ease their shivers. Jack brought more food, a bowl of soup this time. The smell filled the room. The twins' mouths watered. They hesitated again, whispering to each other. But hunger won. They ate quickly, their eyes shining with gratitude they did not yet know how to express. When the meal was over, Jack sat by the fire, watching them. He knew they were still afraid, but he also knew trust was built slowly. He pulled a small blanket from the shelf and covered them. Their eyes followed his every move, still unsure. The twins whispered again, their alien words soft and uncertain. One of them looked at Max, gently touching his fur. The dog licked her hand, and for the first time she giggled. A weak but real sound. Jack smiled. It was the beginning of something new. Outside, the night was not safe. Voices echoed faintly, alien soldiers moving closer through the forest. Jack heard them. His jaw tightening, danger was near. He placed more wood on the fire and whispered to himself, "They won't find you here, not while I breathe." The twins curled together under the blanket, their glowing eyes slowly closing, their small bodies finally resting. Max kept guard beside them, his head resting on their laps, Jack sat by the window, lantern low, watching the dark forest. The cabin had become a fragile sanctuary, the world outside still cruel and cold. But here, in this small room, two abandoned alien sisters found the first shelter of their lives, and the first hope they had ever known. Night whispers. The cabin was quiet, the fire still burned softly in the hearth, shadows danced across the wooden walls. The twins lay close together under the blanket. Max rested at their feet, and Jack sat in a chair near the window, his eyes fixed on the dark forest outside. The night was not safe, alien patrols still searched the land. Faint lights flickered in the distance, and the sound of strange engines carried on the wind. But inside, for a moment, there was peace. The twins whispered in their alien tongue, their voices soft, their eyes half closed. They were not yet sure of this human. He had given them food, warmth, and shelter, but fear still lived deep inside them. One twin whispered, "What if he gives us back?" Her voice trembled. "What if he only keeps us to trade us later?" The other shook her head. But his eyes, they were not like theirs. He looked at us as if we mattered. Their whispers carried through the quiet cabin. Though Jack could not understand the words, he knew the sound of fear. He had heard it in many voices before, voices of the abandoned, voices of the forgotten. Max lifted his head, his ears twitching, then pressed closer to the girls, his warm body a shield. One twin buried her hand in his fur. The other leaned against him. For the first time, their whispers softened into sighs. Jack sat still, his hand resting on the handle of his old rifle. He did not want to use it. But if the patrols came, he would have no choice. He whispered to himself, "No one's taking them." His voice was steady, his eyes hard. The twins watched him secretly from beneath the blanket. They did not understand his words, but they saw the way his eyes never closed. The way he sat like a guardian, watching over them as if their safety was his own. Time passed slowly, the fire crackled, the forest whispered, the night deepened. Outside, strange lights flickered again. Closer this time. Max growled low in his throat. Jack's hand tightened on the rifle. The twins gasped and clung to each other. Fear rushed back into their hearts. The younger of the two began to cry softly, her tears soaking the blanket. Jack turned his head and saw them trembling. His voice was calm as he spoke. "It's all right, you're safe here." They did not understand, but the softness in his tone calmed them. He rose from his chair and added wood to the fire. The glow brightened the room, chasing away the shadows. The twins followed his movements with wide eyes, uncertain but strangely comforted. They whispered again, "Why does he care?" One asked. "No one else ever did." The other replied, "Maybe humans are not all like we were told." The words carried doubt but also a spark of hope. Max barked once, not loud but sharp. Jack moved to the window, pushing the curtains slightly aside. Through the trees he saw the faint glow of alien patrol lamps, moving like fireflies in the distance, too close, too dangerous. His heart beat faster but his face stayed calm. He turned and looked at the twins. They were watching him with frightened eyes. Their whispers silent now, they could feel the danger in the air. Jack spoke again, mostly to himself, "They won't touch you." He blew out the lantern, leaving only the firelight. The cabin sank into a soft orange glow. Every crackle of the wood echoed like thunder to the twins' ears. The girls lay down again, pretending to sleep, but their eyes stayed open, glowing faintly in the firelight. They whispered softly under the blanket, voices shaking. "He will fight for us. I saw it in his eyes." The other whispered back, "But if he fights, he could die, then we are alone again." Their words carried both fear and something new, a fragile bond that was forming. They no longer whispered about escape. Instead, they whispered about the human and his dog, about why he would risk himself for them. Hours passed, the patrols moved away, the night grew quieter. Jack stayed awake, his rifle across his lap. Max lay near the door, ears twitching even in sleep. The twins finally closed their eyes, exhaustion pulling them into dreams. But even in dreams, their whispers continued, the memory of cold caves, of cruel voices, of being left to die, all mixed with the warmth of the fire, the softness of the blanket, and the steady presence of a human who had chosen not to walk away. Jack glanced at them one last time, their small faces finally peaceful. His heart tightened. He whispered, "You'll never be alone again." The words carried through the quiet, not understood by the twins, but felt by something deeper. The cabin stood in silence, the forest outside restless, the world still dangerous. But inside that small wooden room, hope had begun to breathe, carried in whispers, guarded by a human, and warmed by the loyalty of a dog. And though the night was filled with shadows, the abandoned twins, for the first time, did not feel abandoned anymore. The human's choice. The morning came slow, the cabin glowed faintly with the weak sunlight slipping through the cracks of the wooden walls. The twins were still asleep under the blanket, their tiny faces peaceful for the first time in many nights. Max lay curled at their feet, his ears flicking whenever a sound came from outside. Jack sat near the fire, his rifle leaning against the wall, his eyes heavy but sharp. He had stayed awake most of the night, watching, waiting, and thinking. He knew it was only a matter of time before trouble came. The forest outside was alive with whispers of danger. The patrols were searching harder now. Their orders were clear. Find the abandoned twins and erase them. To their kind, weakness was shame, and shame had to be destroyed. Jack's jaw tightened at the thought. The peace broke with a sudden sound, loud knocking at the door. The twins jolted awake, their glowing eyes wide with fear. Max growled low, standing ready. Jack raised his hand to quiet the dog, his heart steady even as the danger pressed against his door. A harsh voice shouted from outside. The alien tongue filled the cabin. Jack did not know every word, but he knew enough. They were demanding entry, searching for the missing ones, searching for the very children who now clung to the blanket in terror. The twins whispered frantically, "They are here, they will take us." Their small hands clutching each other, their little bodies trembling. Max placed himself in front of them, teeth bared, his growl deep. Jack stood slowly, his face calm, his steps steady. He approached the door but did not open it. Instead he spoke firmly, "I have nothing for you here." His voice was hard, though they could not understand. His tone carried weight. The knocking grew louder. The aliens demanded again. This time threatening. Jack placed one hand on the wooden door, feeling the force of their anger pressing through. He looked back at the twins, their glowing eyes begging silently, their whispers desperate prayers he could not hear. He knew the choice before him. He could open the door, hand them over, and walk away free, no punishment, no risk, or he could keep the door closed, lie for them, fight for them if needed, and in doing so, put his life in danger. Jack's heart burned. He remembered their shivering bodies in the cave, their fear, their hunger, their tears. He remembered how Max had licked their hands and made them laugh, how they had whispered in the night, slowly learning to hope again. He turned back to the door, his voice cold and steady. "I told you, nothing here." Silence followed, thick and heavy. The aliens did not believe him. He could hear them muttering outside, the sound of weapons shifting. The twins clung tighter, whispering to each other. "He will betray us, like the others did," one said in fear, but the other shook her head. "No, his eyes are different, he will not." Still, their bodies shook, uncertain of what fate would come. The silence ended with a sharp bang against the door. The wood shook, but Jack did not move. His hand rested on the rifle by his side. Max snarled loudly, ready to attack if the door broke. Then suddenly, the knocking stopped. Footsteps moved away, voices grew faint. The patrol was leaving, suspicion still in their tone but retreating into the forest. The cabin fell silent again. The fire crackled softly. The twins stared at the door, waiting for it to burst open. But it never did. Jack finally let out a breath, his hand loosening on the rifle. He turned to see the twins watching him, their wide glowing eyes filled with disbelief. They had expected betrayal, but instead he had risked himself. He had chosen them. One of the twins whispered softly, almost too quiet to hear, "Guardian." The word carried the weight of trust. The other repeated it, their voices trembling but filled with a new kind of strength. Jack did not understand their language, but he felt the meaning. He saw it in their eyes. He nodded once, then sat back down by the fire. Max returned to the twins' side, licking their faces until they giggled through their fading tears. For the first time since their people had abandoned them, the twins felt safe, not just hidden, but safe because someone had chosen to protect them, someone who had no reason to, someone who could have walked away but didn't. The forest outside still roared with danger. The patrols would return, suspicion growing stronger each time. Jack knew the days ahead would not be easy, but he also knew he had made his choice. He would not abandon them, no matter the cost. The twins whispered to each other as they drifted back to sleep. "He stayed, he fought for us, he will not leave us." Their voices were small but sure, their hearts beginning to believe in something new. And in that small cabin, while the world outside prepared to hunt them down, a bond was sealed, the bond of a human who made a choice, and two tiny alien sisters who finally began to understand what it meant to be loved. Bonds of trust. Days passed slowly in the cabin. The forest outside was still filled with danger. Patrols moved often, searching for any trace of the missing twins. But inside, a new life began to grow. The twins no longer cried through the nights. Their whispers changed from fear to curiosity. They watched Jack carefully, learning how he moved, how he worked, how he spoke to Max with gentle words. At first they stayed close together, never leaving the bed, but slowly, one step at a time, they began to follow him around the cabin, their small glowing eyes always alert, their tiny voices whispering to each other in their alien tongue. Jack noticed their growing courage. He gave them small tasks, simple things, like handing him pieces of wood for the fire, or filling a small bowl with water for Max. The twins hesitated, but every time they succeeded, his smile and gentle nod filled their hearts with warmth. Max became their friend completely. The dog followed them wherever they went, wagging his tail, barking happily when they laughed. The twins would chase him around the cabin, their small feet stumbling, their weak voices finally rising into giggles. One day, Jack was cutting wood outside, the sound of his axe sharp in the quiet air. The twins stood at the doorway, watching closely. He noticed their interest and smiled. Placing the axe aside, he picked up two small sticks and handed them to the twins, showing them how to mimic his movements. At first they were shy, but soon they laughed, swinging the sticks clumsily, pretending to be as strong as him. Max barked and leapt around them, as if cheering them on. The forest seemed brighter with their laughter. That evening, Jack cooked a meal of stew. The rich smell filled the cabin. The twins sat at the table, their hands folded nervously. Jack placed bowls in front of them, then nodded as if telling them it was theirs. They ate slowly at first, then with growing joy, their glowing eyes bright in the firelight. When the meal ended, the twins whispered to each other, then softly began to sing in their alien language, their voices high and delicate, like a song carried by the wind. Jack sat still, listening in silence. The sound touched something deep inside him. The twins noticed his calm face and sang louder, their voices twining together in perfect harmony. Max rested his head on Jack's knee, his tail thumping softly. For the first time, the cabin felt alive with music. Afterward, the girls pointed at Jack, whispering a word again and again, Guardian. It was the name they had given him, the name that meant protector in their tongue. Jack did not understand the exact meaning, but he understood the feeling. It warmed his heart more than fire ever could. The nights were no longer filled with silence. Instead, the twins asked questions with gestures, pointing at things, learning his words slowly, fire, bread, water. They repeated them in broken voices. Jack laughed softly, teaching them patiently. One twin pointed at Max and whispered, Friend. Jack smiled, surprised at how quickly they had learned. The dog barked as if agreeing. The bond between them had become unshakable. But danger never stayed away for long. One evening as Jack repaired the cabin door, the twins froze, their glowing eyes staring at the forest. Faint lights moved between the trees, alien patrols again, searching, closer than ever before. Jack pulled the twins inside quickly, shutting the door and dimming the fire. Max stood stiff, his body tense. The twins clung to Jack's jacket, their whispers trembling, They will find us. Jack knelt down, placing his hands gently on their shoulders, his eyes steady, his voice calm, You're safe. Though they did not know the words, they felt the weight of his promise. The patrol passed, their voices fading into the distance. Silence returned, but the fear lingered in the twins' hearts. They whispered, If they find him helping us, they will kill him too. But the other answered, Then we must protect him as he protects us. The next morning, the twins insisted on helping more. They gathered sticks from near the cabin, carried water from the barrel, even tried to sweep the floor with small clumsy hands. Jack smiled at their effort, even if the work was imperfect. Every small action grew into something bigger. The bond between them deepened, no longer strangers, no longer captor and rescued, but something like a family. At night, the twins sat near the fire, Max curled in their laps, Jack leaned back in his chair, and for a moment, the world outside did not matter. But deep in his heart, Jack knew the forest was closing in. The patrols were too frequent, their eyes too sharp, Soon the cabin would no longer be safe. He looked at the twins, laughing softly as Max licked their faces, and he made another silent promise. Wherever I go, you will go with me. The twins felt it, even without words. Their glowing eyes met his, and in their whispers they spoke of trust, of safety, of the human who had chosen them. The world outside remained cruel, but inside the cabin a fragile light had grown, a bond of trust that even fear could not break. The Great Escape. The forest was quiet, too quiet. Jack felt it before he heard it. The air itself seemed heavier. The birds had stopped singing. Even the wind moved slow through the trees. Max paced near the door of the cabin, his fur standing on end, his growl low and steady. The twins sat close together, their glowing eyes full of worry. They felt the change too. Their whispers were sharp, quick, and frightened. Jack placed his rifle across his lap, his eyes scanning the dark window. Danger was close, closer than ever before. Then the sound came, engines, low and heavy, moving through the forest, alien patrol ships, their lights flickering through the branches. Jack's stomach turned cold. They had found his cabin. The twins gasped, clinging to each other. They are here, one whispered in her alien tongue. They will take us. The other shook her head, but her hands trembled. They could see the fear in Jack's face, not fear for himself, but fear for them. The engines grew louder, voices shouted outside, the harsh alien language echoing in the night. The door shook once, twice, heavy fists pounding against the wood. Max barked furiously, his teeth bared. Jack's mind raced. The cabin was no longer safe. If he stayed, the soldiers would break in and find the twins. There was only one choice left: escape. He grabbed a small bag from the shelf, quickly filling it with food and water. Then he turned to the twins, kneeling low so his eyes met theirs. We have to go, he whispered, his voice calm but firm. They did not know the words, but they understood. He lifted them into his arms, their small bodies shaking. Max pressed close, barking at the door as the pounding grew louder. Then Jack kicked open the back door of the cabin, rushing into the dark forest. Blast of fire lit up the night, burning holes into the wood of the cabin. The soldiers shouted, beams of light slicing through the trees. Jack ran, his breath heavy, but he never let go of the twins. The forest was alive with chaos, lights flashing, branches breaking. Max darted ahead, barking to guide the way. Jack weaved through the trees, his heart pounding like thunder. The twins buried their faces against his chest, afraid to look. A blast struck the ground near him, dirt and fire spraying into the air. Jack stumbled but kept running, his arms strong, his legs burning. He would not stop, not now, not ever. One of the twins cried out, her voice full of fear. Jack tightened his hold, whispering again, "It's all right, I've got you." Though the words meant nothing to them, the sound of his voice gave them strength. The soldiers followed fast, their weapons firing, but the forest slowed them. The trees too thick, the ground too uneven. Jack used every path he knew, every hidden trail he had walked in his years of living there. Still, danger was everywhere. A soldier broke through the trees ahead. Raising his weapon, Jack spun, his rifle lifting. One shot rang out. The soldier fell. Silence followed, except for the heavy breathing of man and dog. Max leapt at another soldier, his teeth sinking into the alien's arm. The scream tore through the night. Jack turned, firing again. Max released and ran back, his mouth wet with blood, his eyes wild with loyalty. But Jack was not untouched. A blast grazed his side, burning pain spreading through his ribs. He stumbled but did not fall. The twins gasped, their glowing eyes wide with terror. But Jack only gritted his teeth and kept moving. The forest opened suddenly. A wide river stretched before them, the water dark and rushing. Behind them, the soldiers closed in, their voices shouting, their lights growing brighter. There was no time. Jack looked at the twins, at Max, then at the water. He had no choice. He stepped into the river, the cold striking like knives, the current pulling hard. The twins clung to him, crying out, but he held them high above the water, his legs fighting with every step. Max swam beside him, barking and pushing against the current. The soldiers fired from the shore, blasts sizzling into the water. But the river carried Jack and the twins farther away, out of reach. The current was strong, pulling them downstream. Jack's muscles burned, his wound throbbed, but he would not let go. The twins' cries were weak now, their small hands gripping his shirt with desperate strength. Finally, the river slowed, and Jack stumbled onto the far bank. Collapsing to his knees, gasping for air, Max dragged himself out beside them, shaking water from his fur. The twins crawled from his arms, their little hands touching his face, whispering in fear. They had seen the wound, the blood. Jack closed his eyes, breathing hard, but smiled faintly. Still alive, he muttered. The forest was quiet again, the patrols far behind. The river had saved them, at least for now. Jack lay back against the ground, Max curled at his side. The twins pressed close to him, whispering softly, their voices no longer filled with fear, but with something else, gratitude. The night was not over, danger was still near. But they had escaped the cabin, they had escaped the soldiers, and together they had crossed into something new. The human had bled for them, the dog had fought for them, and the twins knew in their hearts, this was no longer survival, this was family. A new beginning. The river's roar faded into the distance, the forest around them was damp and quiet. Jack lay against the ground, his side still bleeding from the burn. His breath shallow but steady. Max sat near him, tongue hanging, body tired but eyes still sharp. The twins clung to him, their glowing eyes wet with tears. They whispered in their alien tongue, their voices trembling. One said, "He saved us again," the other replied, "But he is hurt, he will die if we do nothing." Their small hands pressed against his wound, desperate to stop the bleeding. Jack opened his eyes slowly, his face pale. But when he looked at them, he smiled faintly. "Still here," he whispered. The twins did not understand his words, but they felt the strength in his tone. The night stretched long, the forest filled with distant echoes of the patrols. But the river had carried them far. For now, they were safe. The twins huddled beside him, refusing to sleep, their little bodies shaking. But not from cold this time, from fear of losing him. As dawn broke, light filtered through the trees. Jack stirred, forcing himself to his feet. The twins cried out, trying to hold him down. But he shook his head, his eyes determined. He had to move. Staying in one place was death. Max barked softly, nudging Jack's hand, ready to guide again. Jack placed the twins in his arms. His body weak but his will stronger. He whispered, "We keep going." His steps were heavy but steady. Through the forest they moved, deeper than ever before, Jack's memory of the land guiding him. Finally, after hours of walking, they reached a small clearing hidden by thick trees. Here stood the remains of an old shelter, long forgotten, covered in moss and vines. It was not much, but it was hidden, safe, and it could be rebuilt. Jack set the twins down gently, then began clearing the broken branches. Max helped by dragging pieces of wood. The twins watched in silence, then without a word, began to help too. Their small hands lifted twigs, carried stones, fetched leaves, their movements clumsy but full of determination. Jack watched them with quiet pride. Even in their weakness, they refused to be useless, they wanted to give back. As the day passed, the ruined shelter began to take shape again. A small roof, a wall to block the wind, a fire pit in the center. When the fire finally crackled, the twins sat close, their glowing eyes wide with wonder. Jack cooked what little food he had left, sharing it equally, even giving more to the twins. They ate slowly this time, not like before when hunger ruled them. Now they ate with gratitude, their eyes often lifting to his face, studying him as if trying to understand why. That night, the forest was quiet, the stars bright above. The twins whispered again, their voices no longer trembling. One said, "He will not leave us, even when it hurts him." The other answered, "Then we must never leave him either." Max lay curled around them, his warm body keeping them safe. Jack sat beside the fire, his eyes softer than before. He watched them sleep, his heart heavy yet full. In their small faces he saw something he had not felt in years, hope. Days turned into weeks, the new shelter grew stronger. Jack built traps for food, gathered water, and taught the twins small tasks. They learned quickly, carrying sticks, cleaning the space, even helping Max chase away small animals. Their voices grew stronger, their laughter brighter. They learned more human words, home, safe, family. Jack's heart clenched every time they said it. Their voices soft but full of trust. One evening, after a long day, the twins stood before him, their glowing eyes serious. Together they placed their small hands on his chest and whispered, "Home." Then they pointed to themselves, family, and then to Max, friend. Jack froze, his throat tight. He had not expected the words, but they carried more power than anything else. He pulled them close, his arms wrapping around them, his voice breaking, "Yes, family." They did not understand all of it, but they felt it. The world outside still searched, alien patrols still moved through the land, but the forest kept them hidden, and the bond between human, dog, and twins grew stronger each day. The twins were no longer the abandoned children of the cave, no longer the weak ones left to die. They had found something greater than their people's cruel traditions. They had found love. Jack's wound healed slowly, the scar remained, but he carried it with pride, a reminder of the night he chose not to abandon, a reminder of the night he chose family. The twins often touched the scar gently, whispering words he could not understand, but he knew their meaning. They honored him, they trusted him, they loved him. And so, in a hidden shelter deep in the forest, far from the cruelty of their kind, a new beginning was born, not of blood, not of race, but of choice. A human, his dog, and two tiny alien sisters, bound together not by fear, but by trust, by laughter, by the strength to stay when all others turned away. And in that new beginning, the darkness of the galaxy could not reach them, because in the heart of one human, and in the eyes of two fragile children, the light of family had already won.